Action and good evening everyone. So I think in the skills development program that CA is conducting this time has different topics, and all those topics are very important for your day-to-day skills. As young upcoming CAs, all these skills are necessary when you're going and performing in your day-to-day life, in your corporate careers, and these are essential ingredients to your life as well. So when doing anything in your life, probably in your personal life, in your corporate life, or in your office work, you will have to take a lot of decisions in your day-to-day life. So when you're taking these decisions, how are you going to take that? Are you pressurized to take decisions? Are you taking the right decisions, or are you making mistakes in these decisions? So to address all these gaps or some questions that are in our mind, the today's session the CA Sri Lanka has designed in this skill development program, the namely as integrity and ethical decision making in the corporate world. So I'm sure as young upcoming CAs, you all are definitely valuing these two words, integrity and ethical in decision making. I mean, not only decision making, I'm sure you all do value this integrity and ethical behaviors in any of the actions that you do in your day-to-day life. So how this decision making comes to this picture when you're coming to your day-to-day acts, how these particular frameworks would apply to you is we're going to discuss within next 1.5 hours with some of the practical examples that we thought would be useful to you in your day-to-day life and in your career. So let's see, I think slides have to be moved. Okay, now done. Right. So this is the presentation overview. Basically, there are 6 sections that we are presenting today. If I name those things, the ethical landscape is the first lesson. So ethics in the real world, we'll see some of the examples of how these ethics work in a real world, and role of professionals. So what is a role? What is your role? I'm sure all of you all are professionals. I'm sure you all are working. So what is your role? Role of a professional, we'll discuss that. An introduction to NOCLA, non-compliance of rules and regulations, and the scenarios that would affect this NOCLA aspect, because that NOCLA goes hand in hand with these ethical and integrity principles. And some of the tools and best practices a young CA can use in these two frameworks, ethical reporting and ethics and integrity decision making, and some of the takeaways that you can have today from this session would be the last section in this presentation. So this is the presentation outline. So basically this is surrounding integrity and ethical decision making in a corporate work. So I'm sure you'd appreciate wherever you work, it affects. It's not necessary. I mean, one could think whether these are applicable only for an auditors or someone who's actually doing public practice. No, even if you do anything, any job, any scale, this ethics and integrity is utmost important to outperform in your work. So we'll see what are the objectives of this lesson today. So by listening to this session, you will get to know and you will understand the meaning of integrity and ethical decision making. So meaning of the integrity, so that is very critical, because I mean anything you study, you should know what does that really mean for you in the perspective of your CA role. So understand the meaning of the integrity and ethical decision making. So surrounding understanding about this particular topic, and it recognizes the importance of ethics in business environment. So how important these ethics to be practiced in your day-to-day business environment. And if not, the third one, the identify the risk and consequences of unethical behavior. If you do not perform in the right manner, if you do not demonstrate your ethical and integrity behavior, what would be the risk that you will foresee or you will face as an individual or as the entity that you are working would be also discussed. And we will learn the role of a professional in upholding ethical standards. So what is your role as a professional to uphold these particular ethical standards will be discussed, and we will see what tools and best practices to foster this ethical culture into an organization. So, I think again that is a very powerful word, ethical culture. So, it is not just I mean ethics can't bring into a person or to an organization by merely putting rules and regulations. So, it is very effective if you bring a culture of an organization into that picture. If the culture itself develops ethical and integrity behaviors, so then it becomes a practice of everyone. Then it becomes a day to day task of being act as an ethical and integrity a person with ethics and integrity. So, if you just bring only the rules, what happens is then everyone would do for a fear, and no sooner if you think the particular monetary mechanism that governs this particular rule or a regulation is not covering you, so then people would tend to breach those ethics and integrity principles. So, that is why it is always better to bring that to the culture of the organization. So, let us see the details. So, first let us see what is the ethical landscape that we should move on. So, what do you mean by ethical decision making and this integrity? So, integrity in very simple English, if you explain, doing the right thing even when no one is watching you. So, doing the right thing even no one is watching you. So, always do not think okay, so sometimes one could tend to do mistakes, the wrong things just because no one is monitoring me. Okay, if I take this money, that is fine, or I will take this money temporarily, I will put it back, right. So, if there is a mentality like that, oh no one saw this mistake, so then I am like coward. So, something one would say I am doing a very immaterial thing. So, if you think the gamut of whole thing in an organization, if I put just 10 half sheet printout for my personal use, it is not a big thing. So, all these comes under this ethical or integrity violations or integrity failures. Even if no one is watching your printouts, you should not misuse any of these resources, because these company resources are there for a particular purpose. But if anyone is trying to misuse those resources, so that is a kind of a cheating to an organization, and the person or the individual who is doing that will have to I mean unfortunately say do not have the necessary integrity to perform that task or to be in that organization or be a part of that organization, right. So, that is integrity. The second thing, ethical decision making. What do you mean by ethical decision making? The process of evaluating and choosing among alternatives in a manner consistent with ethical principles, right. A few aspects there. The process. So, ethical decision making is a process of evaluating and choosing. I mean, if you have many alternatives to do things or many ways of doing things or many options to do things, out of all these options you evaluate and choose the correct thing which are surrounded within these ethical principles. So, you are taking or picking the item which moves within the ethical principle. So, that is the process that you are doing or you can call it as ethical decision making. So, that is very important. I mean, when you performing in a company, when you are working in a company, there could be many ways of doing things. There could be many alternative ways, many paths, many avenues. Example, if you want to buy something or you want to purchase something, you want to procure something, we say a machinery or this particular clipper. So, what is the process a company would generally will have? So, they do have quotations required to be called, and the quotations required to be evaluated. Then the correct supplier based on the quality and the price have to be decided, and all these processes are there because to get the right thing sorted out, to get the right procurement inside of the company. But I mean, on the other hand, if the purchasing manager wants, sometimes because there is lack of monitoring or no one is there to monitor that function, without all these quotations or processes being evaluated, having the correct supply, etc., etc., they can straight away purchase from the known party, which that known party would give a kickback to that purchasing manager. Okay, if you buy from me, I'll give a discount to you and I'll credit that money to your own account, or you will get a personal benefit, a voucher from our company, or things like that. I mean, there could be many ways of doing things, but selecting the right process of doing thing is coming under this particular definition. So, ethical decision making. So, when you have so many options, you are moving on within the ethical principles, right. So, in this whole process, what are the key elements if we discuss that? The first one is transparency. So, there must be a open and clear decision. I mean, sometimes we are scared of revealing all these decisions to all the other stakeholders. Why? The decision that you have taken has not been transparent, or it had not gone through a transparent process. So, then one who executed the transaction would little scared that okay, I will get revealed. I mean, if someone would question, but if you have gone through a transparent process, you can keep your head high and very confidently face to any query or any audit, any inquiry, any regulator queries or anything, because you have gone through the process. So, the decision that you have taken is transparent, right. So, second thing, fairness, treating all the stakeholders equally or justifiably. So, whether the decision that you have taken is fair by everyone, or fair by the relevant frameworks, fair by all the rules and regulations, right. So, the third thing, the responsibility. Okay, if I take a decision today, I am owning the decision and the outcomes. Nothing to be scared, because I know I have taken the right decision, I have gone through the framework, I have not violated any rule. So, I can take the responsibility. I mean, in any query comes, inquiry comes, oh yes, I can face that. So, that confidence brings to me, because I am responsible of what I did, and because since I have taken the transparent and fairness process, nothing to be scared. And the courage, the last thing, I mean, we can define these processes in many different ways, but some of the key elements that I thought would be very important in this process are these four. The courage, the last one, standing by ethical choices despite the pressure. Sometimes when you are working in a corporate environment or even your household, so there could be a lot of pressures being put on us. So, because of those, sometimes these pressurized decisions, we might not take the right decisions in our life or in our career and all that. But you should have the courage to stand by the ethical choices. I mean, at some point you will get the right treatment, even though sometimes temporarily you will have repercussions out of that. So, don't scared for those temporary repercussions, but at some point you will get the right treatment from the society and from the company or any other stakeholder. So, stand by ethical choices despite the pressure. Sometimes bosses could pressurize some of these subordinates to pass this entry, do this wrong thing, no need of a quotation, you go and process it. So, some people tend to act on that. So, but you can do, I mean, no need to fight with anyone, but very politely you can say no, I mean, why do not we follow this process? We do have a framework, so that is not the right way. So, let me do this in this manner. I mean, you can politely say, and you should have the courage to say that and move forward in the correct process. So, these are the kind of elements and the definitions of this particular topic. Integrity and ethical decision making. So, let us move on to see what are the core ethical principles on those. I mean, transparency. Example, a corporate can share any of their reports, probably environmental impact reports or customer evaluations or any other report that public would necessary to publish their current status. So, sometimes people might not liking to publish these reports, because they might think, okay, things will be revealed about us, the bad publicity will go out. I mean, it's not the case, right? If you want to be transparent, really, then you have to publish all what you have and accept that truth and move forward. So, fairness, the management, I mean, fairness in this particular example, it talks about to all your own employees. So, there must be a particular framework when you're paying to your employees or giving the compensation to be fair by everyone, right? So, there won't be any ad hoc ways of giving increments to only favorites and not to give increments to other people. So, there must be a real performance based culture. The performance should be evaluated. Whoever who performs should be given the benefits according to the company policy and the framework. So, then it's fair by everyone. So, everyone knows if I perform well, yes, I will go get promoted, get the bonus and incentive or whatnot, right. But if there is no such a culture, then people would go out of their way to secure their positions. So, that is not definitely a good culture or a healthy culture in an organization. So, you definitely do not create such a culture. I mean, if people are reporting to you, have that fairness culture among people, always recognize the good work and the performance, not anything else. And just because someone is really trying to be friendly with you, do not go by those, because you are there in a corporate for a particular purpose, particular official purpose. Do not defeat that purpose because of any of these human actions, right. So, the responsibility, and sometimes okay, we will say there is a production failure in an organization, admit that mistake, publish a notice. I mean, you have seen maybe probably in social media, if some bad publicity goes about a company, they sometimes put notices or the letters or emails accepting and apologizing the inconvenience caused to the customers, and the action plan that the company has taken to recover that situation. That shows the responsibility. I mean, you are not going away with the responsibility, you accept it. Okay, anyone could make mistakes. So, then lot of respect will be created from the public also. I mean, otherwise what happens, if you have made a mistake and if you do not accept that responsibility and keep on trying to deny or hide from the media or answering to the relevant stakeholders, then that does not show the right behavior. You take the responsibility, okay, made the mistake, admit the mistake and say the corrective action plan and move forward. So, that is the right way. So, the courage, I mean, if any unethical behavior or action been happening in any organization, despite the fear of retaliation, to prevent such misconducts is the correct behavior that you should display in an organization. So, sometimes I mean, if you be honest, sometimes you might lose the job, but you have done the right thing. There are enough doors to be opened if you do the right thing, and at some point you will definitely be accepted for all the good work, right. So, why ethics matters in this business? What are the benefits one could gain from this ethical behavior? So, the ethical behavior, the integrity culture or ethical culture will build the trust within the stakeholders, right. So, that is very important, because stakeholders are the parties that are essential to have in our businesses, maybe our employees, your shareholders, directors, suppliers. So, that builds a trust within the stakeholders. So, then the trust within the stakeholders is actually creating a very strong company, a very strong organization, because all the parties concerned are really be with the particular corporate, because everyone trusts that organization. So, that fosters confidence among customers, because end of the day the business is there to cater to all your customer needs. So, that foster, I mean, ultimately customers also will be confident about the company, because all the other stakeholders are confident with the company. So, then naturally that culture builds in. So, if any organization is doing ethical behavior, because if you see in any other scenarios why all these public listed companies are publishing a lot of publications including the annual reports, why these annual reports have so many sections and the pages top of the financial statements. I mean, why all these pages or all this time being invested to doing these annual reports? Why you think so? I mean, one could argue, okay, financial statements would suffice just to see whether it's profitable, to see whether I can get a dividend or not. No, I mean, internationally or in Sri Lankan context or anywhere, the stakeholders want to have the trust on the company. So, for that only people or the companies or the corporates would disclose all these pieces of information to build the trust among the stakeholders, because being transparent and being confident and all that. So, people value that, people will stay with those companies. I mean, if I am a customer, if I know for a fact this particular company is employing child labor, which is a very unethical practice, would I buy those products? No, because this product has come to the shelf by following such an unethical practice. So, do I want to be a part of that product? So, we always sometimes refuse the products which comes from these bad processes, bad ethical practices, etc. Right. So, such a scenario, that is why following this ethics and integrity is also matter. So, that builds the trust among the stakeholders. So, what is the second advantage? Broad regulatory risk. There, I mean, any company would govern by so many regulations, namely Companies Act or tax regulations or any other listed company regulations, environmental regulations, if it is a pharma company to operate the trade license, there would be regulations, municipal council, so what not. I mean, the long list. Risk, a regulator will pinpoint that and give a non-compliance letter, or it could lead to a suspension of a company license even. There had been situations like that. So, but if a company or a corporate following those processes, definitely there is no risk of such regulatory action being taken. So, that is why this integrity and ethical behaviors definitely reduces this legal and regulatory risk. And the third thing, that enhances long term sustainability and reputation. So, any company wants to be sustainable. So, any company will want to perform in a long run. So, if there are, I mean, however how much the profits a company earn, however how much the balance sheet is stronger, but if you do not have all these processes, there is obvious risk of company not being sustainable. So, any stakeholder in modern days need a sustainable companies, not just companies making instant profits and next year again it becomes loss or whatever. So, stakeholders really need a sustainable companies, because we will say you are buying a motor vehicle from a company, and if this company is not sustainable, what happens? In future years for the repairs, there won't be spare parts being coming to the market, because the company had not been sustainable, right. So, anything sustainability matters, and the reputation, because the reputation is the best way of marketing your brand or the company, because without the reputation new customers cannot be added, the existing customers cannot be pleased, and however how much the marketing you do, if you have a bad reputation, the products or the service will not be successful. So, that promotes responsible decision making, because the sustainability and reputation is also two benefit factors that a company can gain by moving this particular practice. So, very quick recap, the ethical and integrity behavior builds the trust within the stakeholders, it reduces legal and regulatory risk, and it enhances long term sustainability and a reputation of an organization. So, those are, I mean, not a very exhaustive list, but three key benefits one can get by going in this particular ethical and integrity decision making process. So, what are the risks of unethical behaviors? So, we have seen I mean every day sometimes we are seeing all these legal penalties and fines. So, what if you are not following all the tax regulations and filing a false income tax returns with the Indian Revenue Department? Somewhere down the line, because they are scrutinizing all these financial records, the tax returns and the tax computation, etc. So, they will find these mistakes, or the tax regulation or the tax return is a false one or wrong one. So, then what happens? Indian Revenue Department would definitely send an assessment, tax assessment, by computing the right tax amounts that the company should have been paid with a penalty and a fine, right. So, it will come with an increased cost of such legal penalties and fines. So, and if you are hiding or cheating the customs with the HS codes or the products that you are importing, exporting, then down the line customs will definitely find it, and they will impose a lot of fines, and that is a lot of reputation risk to the company. So, all these legal penalties and fines can be avoided if you are going right in the ethical behavior, and the reputational damages can be definitely minimized. So, if the loss of the public trust is gone, it is difficult to regain. Sometimes the brands, to build a brand, it will take decades, a lot of hard work, a lot of painful processes had gone through a company to build a brand, but to kill the brand it will take just 5 minutes, or I mean such a one unethical practice, a major unethical practice of an individual can kill that entire brand within few seconds. So, that hard or that dangerous all these unethical practices. And third thing, the employees can get disengaged, because I am sure no one wants to work in an unethical environment. Your friends would say, oh my God, you are working in this company which is a very unethical company, we know that. So, then you would feel it like I mean ultimately you are also part of that company, and everyone would know that this is not a proper company to work for. So, then people would take decisions to resign from that particular employment, right. So, the employees will disengage, not only employees, all the other stakeholders into that matter will disengaged with the company if these unethical practices are going forward. So, the key takeaway from this ethical unethical behaviors and practices, but I have to say in very simple English, short term unethical gains can lead to long term organizational failures, right. So, one could think, okay, this is a very small action, nothing would happen, but these small actions get together. Sometimes first step would be a small action, but the next step would be a bigger unethical action. So, over the time if this happens, so it could definitely lead to a long term organizational failure. So, those things cannot be hidden I mean forever, at some point those will come out, right. So, remember, short term unethical gains will not definitely suffice in day to day life or in the corporate life. So, we will see some of these ethical issues, the corporate collapses for reasons I have not mentioned any of these company names, but these are kind of known cases why these corporates have failed. A major manufacturing company collapsed following unethical decisions by top executives. So, few top executives have taken wrong decisions. A giant manufacturing entity collapsed because they are falsifying the reports and ignoring regulatory compliance to cut costs. So, there had been some regulatory requirements for that particular company, but they have been ignoring, and they have falsifying about their safety reports. So, then consequences, massive product recalls and legal penalties totaling to billions, because the legal penalties once it is imposed, it will, because since it is coming from a regulation or a legislation of the country, you cannot avoid it. I mean unless people who are imprisoned or depending on that particular law, but the fines would be billions the company will have to pay, and there could be criminal investigations and executive resignations obviously, because people can't hold anymore if these things happen. And because of all these massive cash outflows or the penalties and all the other charges, the company can be bankrupted, and it will have to be closed. I mean, at the end, that would be the end result, and that affects so many lives, because the employees would lose their jobs, the suppliers would lose their supplies, and so many families can get affected just because a couple of people's wrong act. I mean, so much of repercussions can happen to this sometimes the hardly brought up brand and to the people there. So, lessons: cutting corners on ethics can lead to irreversible damages. So, there are no shortcuts or cutting corners on these ethical practices definitely will not suffice. So, that will damage sometimes permanently to an organization. And ethical leadership is essential for sustainable business success. So, that is very important. So, ethical leadership. So, this particular ethics and integrity in an organization, in a corporate world, should come from the tone at the top. So, there must be governance principles, or the CEO, the board of directors and the audit committees or any other board subcommittees, they should give that tone to all the employees. Do not do the wrong things, even smallest thing or some other general activities. Even when you are recruiting a person to a company, there will be lot of scrutiny being done about that particular person. The interviews are being conducted, there are skills being assessed, and top of that the background checks sometimes being done. I mean, we know for certain roles it's a lot of deep background checks being done about this person to see whether there had been any disciplinary cases. So, if you are a referee of someone, I mean, in a recruitment, the companies would have called you and asked about how ethical this person, how had been the integrity of this person, whether there had been any disciplinary actions, because the companies are scared actually to recruit a bad apple because it could cultivate within that organization's culture. So, that is why a lot of HR practices and policies of an organization has inbuilt all those checkpoints to measure this particular aspect even when you are recruiting a person. I mean, one bad person can spoil sometimes an entire organization or can damage heavily a reputation of a company. So, this leadership is very important. As I said, the tone at the top, all the policies and procedures have to be laid down from the top to the bottom based on these frameworks, and in case if anyone is breaching such ethical and integrity principles, there must be obvious repercussions to those people, even sometimes like firing from the job. To that extent, those should be strict actually. Then only these things can be maintained. As I said early in the presentation, rules and regulations is one thing, the other thing is the culture. So, people should be rewarded or recognized for these good practices, ethical behaviors, or someone is doing someone acting with an integrity should be definitely rewarded, right. So, I mean, it is not in the corporate world, in any situation it could be the case. If someone will say a policeman is like quoting a person who is dealing with the drugs. I mean, recent incident I read in the news. So, these drug people try to bribe these police people, but police people has done the right thing, and a massive drug dealing has been revealed. So, at that point, if the police would have taken the bribe, so then temporarily this case would have gone under the carpet, but at some point it get revealed. Then at that point, the entire police people also will get arrested if they have done a bad thing, and it's a reputational damage to the entire forces as well. But since they did the right thing, I saw in the same news the villagers have recognized them, appreciated them. So, a lot of good things would happen in your life if you go in that particular path, right. so let's move on. Uh, when we doing this integrity and ethical cultures in an organization, one thing that we've seen, whistleblowers sometimes play a big role there, because these whistleblowers, I mean, in case if you don't know, it's been like an anonymous channel, or sometimes your identity can be revealed. It goes to a highest position or to an independent position. If anything wrong happening within a company, anyone could call and alert these particular parties about this particular wrongdoing or unethical practice that is going through within this company through these whistleblower policies, right. So, these whistleblowers actually champions these integrity behaviors, because people would scared then reporting all these or rather committing these particular wrong things, because we know there is a whistleblower and anyone could report those aspects to top people in an organization. So, one example, an internal audit leader at a large telecommunication company uncovered billions of dollars in hidden expenses deliberately concealed from investors, right. So, some wrong financial reporting and a cash outflow been revealed by an internal auditor. So, how it has been reviewed? The internal auditor had been the person who is receiving these whistleblower calls, information, and there had been a whistleblower to the internal auditor about this misconduct by someone obviously who is working in the organization, and they had the courage, spoke up despite personal and professional risk. I mean, there would be obvious chance people would guess who blew this whistle, because there could be maybe some only small number of people might know that. So, then people can easily guess something, but despite that the particular party had the courage in reporting that, and accountability choose the truth over silence to protect public interest. So, they choose the truth over silent. So, that is very important, truth over silent to protect the public interest, because by doing that act the organization can be saved. So, integrity demonstrated ethical leadership under pressure. So, that the ethical leadership has been demonstrated even the particular person is under pressure. So, these whistleblowers are also vital in maintaining transparency and holding corporations accountable, right. So, I mean, it is a good practice always a company to maintain this whistleblower to hold the transparency and corporations accountable. Their courage protects stakeholders and promotes ethical business practices. So, this particular practice courageous to protect the stakeholder needs, and it promotes the ethical business practices in organization. So, in case if the whistleblower is not being practiced in any organization, definitely a good thing to practice within a company, because lot of I mean, since it is anonymous, people would have sometimes the courage to report that. So, that is a good thing in here. Some people would send the letters, emails or the telephone calls, any other matters would do that, right. And the next topic that we want to discuss a little bit, sometimes there are gray zones in decision making. Sometimes we do not know whether it is a right thing or a wrong thing, right. Sometimes it is not very clear, right. So, always if you are in a gray zone when you are taking a decision, just think whether you are taking the ethical choice, whether it can be unclear or it can be conflicted. So, then if you feel so, I think it could be a wrong decision you are taking, because if you, in case if that particular decision is not within your ethical choices, it would be unclear what would be the outcome after that decision being taken, or if you believe there could be conflicts by taking this decision. I mean, better if you can think twice or consult someone who's good or master in that particular area before taking that decision, because otherwise if this decision in the gray area, there could be a tendency you are taking the wrong decision, right. So, common gray areas would be conflict of interest, personal gain versus company interest. So, sometimes what matters the most, okay, one would think no, my personal gain would matter rather than company interest. So, then there is a definite gray area of that decision, then you might not taking the correct decision on that. The pressure from supervisors or your bosses, no, sorry, pressure from superiors, maybe from bosses, urge to bend rules to meet goals, right. So, we say the revenue target is not been met, CFO comes and tell, okay, anyway we can do that targets next year as well, but why do not you pass a journal entry by crediting revenue and debiting some hidden asset, hide the debit entry somewhere and credit the revenue, because we are just short by achieving the target, and if we achieve, everyone would get a bonus. So, pressure from a superior and you urge to bend rules. So, that is not a definitely a good thing. I mean, if the target is not being met after you trying, can't help. So, that is a reality, that is the truth. Rather facing that bitter truth, doing the wrong thing would definitely kill. I mean, it would be a spider web, you will not get out of it. I mean, to hide that particular wrong entry, you will pass another 10 wrong entries in the subsequent period just to cover up one entry, and it is like a spider web, it will be never ending there, because you will not get out of it unless you admit the mistake and correct it, you will not get out of it, right. I mean, just one single entry could enough to ruin the particular corporate and the whatever the financial statements and everything, right. So, sometimes things are lucrative in the short term, but definitely not in the long run. So, choose these quick wins, I mean, do not think about these quick wins, always think about the sustainable practices. So, that is what important in this integrity and ethical framework want to survive. I mean, just one example, this revenue being overstated, one could think is just one time, we will not do it next year, because the next year we will definitely achieve the target. It is not the matter of times, it is the integrity and your ethical behavior. So, do not do even it is a minor matter, right. So, when you are taking this ethical decision making, just see these checkpoints, identify the stakeholders, who is affected by this decision, whether anyone is affected by this decision and who will be affected. If your stakeholders are affected by this particular decision in a negative manner, so then you should not take that decision. There could be enough alternative ways of doing this particular activity and act. So, select that particular path rather going in this particular wrong behavior. And the second, consider values, laws and outcomes. I mean, forget the laws and outcomes, there must be a value for everyone, right. So, there must be self respect, the way we brought up by our parents. So, do not forget all these facts and just try to do something not right. So, laws and regulations, obviously if you violate that, you would have the repercussions, and do not think forever can be you can hide also, at some point it will get caught. And I mean, top of that, you need to see your own values, the way you have been brought up from your childhood, before you take any unethical or non-integrity practice. So, align with core ethical values, integrity, fairness and transparency, what we discussed in the first slide, right. So, decide and document, make an informed transparent decision. So, if the decision is informed and a transparent one, then there is a less chance you go wrong, and record all the rationale and steps that you have taken. So, that is a good practice, because if you are taking a transparent decision, document within, because of this framework, because of this policy manual of the company, this chapter, this line only I am taking this decision. So, my decision has a framework which is accepted by the company. So, if you document by a memo or whatever the format, so then later on, even if someone inquire, yes, you have your backing, you know why you took this decision and it is within the framework. Sometimes you tend to forget, that is why this documentation piece is really important for you to keep as a good practice and to safeguard yourself in future to be produced. I mean, that doesn't mean to you record, okay, your boss is asking you to do a wrong thing. For your safeguard, sometimes you do, boss, can you send me an email approving that? So you think just because boss approved the wrong thing and you have that email, you are safe. No, it's not. You are still part of that scam. You are still part of that particular problem, and more importantly, you know that's a scam. So that's why you are asking boss's approval and you are trying to keep that email. So that mentality is you are just trying to safeguard yourself. You think just because boss told doing a wrong thing, he is okay just because he is a boss. No, it's not the case. Company do have a framework that the company been running at. It could be internal and external environment, policy manuals, rules and regulations. Just because you have some email, someone is approving wrong thing, would not save you in the land of the law. You will also be part of that scam, right? So, purpose of this to guide consistent, accountable and ethical decision making. So, that is very important, your decisions being consistent and you are accountable for the decision, and these decisions are ethical decisions. So, that is the whole purpose of doing all these things. I mean, one would think the ethics would be applied only for the public. Private companies can run the way the private owners wants. No, there is nothing like that. So, in the public, the ethics are actually has lot of public interest and welfare. I mean, we all know everyone wants a government or the parliamentarians or local government members to run practices ethically, right? We always admire good politicians who has ethics and values, but once it comes to our own acts, are we valuing to that extent, or are we going and voting to the, I mean, everyone asks the question, are we voting to the right people all the time, right? So, but before go and correct all these politicians, try to correct yourself whether you are taking the right decision, whether you have your own value. So, high standards for transparency and fairness is always keep in mind this transparency and fairness, and decisions in a public sector often is like subject to media scrutiny. So, I mean, if anything gone wrong, even the allegation being made, it goes through media and there will be a lot of reputational risk, right? Once it comes to the private sector, the profits that the private sectors are owning or generating, there must be a purpose. So, all this could be driven by innovation, growth and shareholder values. So, that is very essential for a private company to drive through these particular aspects. And there must be increased focus on the corporate and social responsibility and the CSR activities. So, and moreover, as I mentioned before, ethics would definitely guide the brand image, trust and the long term success of the company. I mean, even if you do not do any other branding or marketing, still if you demonstrate ethical practices, the products and the services that the company is offering, still people would go and buy that, because they know this particular company is known for all these ethical practices and the integrity, and I mean, all these products and services are being generated from their hardly owned good practices. So, that itself is a brand and a marketing tool. So, once it comes to the role of the auditors, because some people, I mean, most of the times this auditor word also comes out with the auditors doing the correct role or the correct things or the right thing, the correct procedures, where the auditors are biased. Why not auditors reveal all that? Yes, there is the part in there also, but it is not, as I said, the definition of this integrity and ethics is doing the right thing even someone is not watching you. So, auditor is not required just because the auditor is coming and auditing, or you are scared of this auditing process. So, one should not do the right thing. It is their own values, right, own ethics, own standards. So, the role of auditors would come there sometimes to safeguard all these unethical or non-integrity practices. So, auditors can fail if they fail to challenge and question from the companies about the accounting policies and practices that the company has adopted, right. So, if the company is doing wrong accounting policies, practices which are deviating from accounting standards and showing their numbers, its auditor's duty is, I mean, if it is material, then its auditor's duty is also there to question that and address those matters effectively in the audit opinions. And one of these scandals, it was noted that I mean, while this audit process is going on, the auditors have like changed the documentation and hiding from the investigation. So, that particular practice actually led to fail in that particular audit firm internationally, right. So, that is the role of the auditors. If the auditors do not follow all these auditing standards and ethical principles, then auditors' duty is also a failure. So, the governance failure could happen, weak internal control systems within the company. I mean, that is actually a very dangerous scenario if there is a weak internal control system within the company, because that could have a lot of leakages. I mean, that creates a room for an employee to create a fraud or a malpractice or unethical behavior, right. So, there must be a strong internal control culture within the company, that is very important. So, then even if someone thinks to do a wrong thing, still there could be preventive and detective controls to mitigate those actions. The second thing, however, how much the internal control structure is stronger is no point if the monitoring mechanism of the board or the management or the audit committees are weaker, right. So, the lack of oversight would lead to the board and audit committees operate can collapse, and there could be major financial losses. And to an audit firm, the audit firm also, I mean, if they fail to perform these duties continuously, there will be a dissolution in the audit firm as well. So, I think I touched already importance of ethical culture. So, that is the best way of bringing this culture and integrity to an organization. Create that culture, always reward and recognize people who does the right thing. I mean, it's very pleasant also, rather like penalizing someone who's not doing the right thing, recognizing the correct people. That's a very positive culture that you can bring. And there must be an oversight by an independent party whether these things are happening, and auditors or audit committees or, I mean, non-executive directors, internal auditors, any other parties, there must be oversight mechanism, because it's a human nature. If not monitored, people could tend to do wrong things. So, there must be importance of oversight role. And the training and awareness is one other thing. Sometimes people tend to do wrong things because they have a knowledge gap. They don't know what is right thing, wrong thing, especially newly recruited interns sometimes would not know the not getting 3 quotations in a large supply, it's a wrong thing, because there could be a knowledge gap. They have not experienced it before. So, this training and awareness is also very important for an organization about these topics periodically, starting from newcomers. I mean, a newcomer, it's very good investment for a newcomer to train all this right at the beginning of their careers. Personally, they will gain, as a company you will gain. So, proactive ethics framework helps prevent scandals and strengthen long term success of a company is something no need to say that. So, that will definitely be a sustainable practice. Some reflecting questions to reflect. What would you do in a gray zone situation? How would you respond when the right choice isn't clear? What values you would guide this decision? I mean, if you are in a gray zone, question yourself, am I taking the right decision? Am I taking the right choice? What values that I can bring to my answer if I take this decision, right? I mean, everyone has life experiences. You need to use your common sense obviously, and there must be a skepticism involved in some of these decisions. So, always question yourself repetitively, then right answer definitely will be brought in. If you do not know, the best thing is to consult an appropriate person if you do not know and if you are in a gray zone. Have you ever faced ethical pressures from your company, organization? Were you asked to do something that is felt wrong, right? How did you handle it, or how would you handle it, right? Politely you can definitely get away with that. That is my simple answer for that question. Politely refuse to do that, see if it is a wrong thing. Who can turn into for ethical guidance? Your mentors, managers, ethics hotlines, Novia support system. So, if you have an ethical dilemma, you should know whom to be contacted. Sometimes if your boss is the one who is creating this ethical dilemma, then there must be other higher people that you can reach to, or even may not be a higher position, it could be auditors that you can reach to prevent these situations that you are getting caught into these particular ethical dilemmas. So, as a professional, you have different codes, so sources and guidance for professional ethics. Yes, obviously, International Ethics Standard Board IESBA has given ethical the benchmark golden practices, sorry, the global practices for the professional accountants. So, stemming from that, based on the IFAC code, Sri Lankan context, CS Sri Lanka has ethical corporate governance and ethics local interpretations being published by CS Sri Lanka. So, as a young professional, either you will be becoming CA very soon, I am sure. So, as a young professional, you need to know that, I am sure that is there embedded in your syllabus as well, but if you are getting closer to a qualification, the ACA qualification, you are just qualified or whatever, read these books, or at least you should know the content of these particular code of ethics, because then you won't go wrong in your decision making, especially ethical decision making. So, core ethical principles that been laid out in this IFAC code are integrity, objectivity, professional competency and due care, confidentiality, professional behavior. So, let us see all these items in detail in the next slide. So, a chartered accountant have a duty to uphold public trust. So, that is very important. I mean, that is a perception anyone would have from a chartered accountant. Yeah, okay, that organization has a chartered accountant. So, then the perception is, yes, this company financials or whatever this chartered accountant's role, it would be performed with correct and ethical manner according to the standards and the principles. So, that is a perception. So, as a CA, you should carry that brand. So, the financial integrity is utmost important and support transparent governance. So, why when IMF come, the IMF had to propose lot of these tax reforms to increase taxes, basically your personal income tax, VAT rates, and those are electricity tariffs. Why? Ideally, if everyone pays their tax properly in Sri Lanka as the way they earn, the government will never have this lack of government revenue. Why all these problems happens? Because people hide in taxes, or some people, not everyone. So, but as a CA, definitely you can take actions, because you have the power, and you will definitely go through all this and always bring all those people to the right path, behavior. Then entire world will be very ethical and nice. So, all this integrity, objectivity, professional competency, confidentiality and professional behavior, let us see what those are. So, integrity, be honest and straightforward in all professional relationships, be honest and straightforward in all professional relationships. So, by English literal meaning you can understand. And one example, we say financial statement genuinely an error happened. So, okay, CFO admit that and correct in the next quarter or next financial year or in the next reporting. I mean there are ways that a financial error can be corrected, disclosures can be made, and the financials can be restated. So, it's a genuine error happened, can't help, learn through mistakes, but trying to hide that is not the right behavior. Admit it and move forward. So, objectivity, avoid biasness, conflict and interest of undue influences, right. Avoid biasness to anything, conflict of interest, avoid, and undue influence, avoid, right. So, one example, an auditor can refuse to perform audit of the company that if their employees are holding shares, right, because that has a biasness. If I am as a audit partner, if I am holding shares of a company A, and if I am given to audit, I am biased because I am the shareholder. I mean, if more profits are being shown, it's beneficial to me as a shareholder because I can get a proper dividend. So, then if any accounting entry I am seen as auditor which reduces the profit, I will keep silent because I have a personal gain there, right. So, things like that. So, professional competency and due care. So, professional knowledge, I mean whatever the task you are doing, especially as a CA, you have to have that knowledge piece that is required. Sometimes, as I said before, also the errors and unethical practices can happen because of the knowledge gap. Not that you are unethical, but you do not know what to be done, right. So, do not have that knowledge gaps, maintain professional knowledge and act diligently. You have to, the application of that knowledge is also important. You can't go and apply something else. So, tax consultant example, attends regular updates on tax laws to provide accurate tax advices. So, the taxes are in Sri Lankan context changing always. So, that is why all these tax I mean CS Sri Lanka would organize a lot of tax forums. Why? People want to get updated, the current knowledge is required if you are performing. So, maintain your professional knowledge. I mean just because you get qualified, the education journey does not stop there, then only it starts sometimes. To maintain, the people will reach to you to get the advice. So, to maintain that professional knowledge is really important. The fourth one, the confidentiality. So, you will be revealed as a CA lot of information which are confidential to that particular organization. Either you leave that organization tomorrow, still you need to protect that confidentiality of that information or that company or that person. So, that is a again good standing practice. Do not breach any data confidentiality or steal data from an organization, customer base or whatnot for your own benefits, right. So, doing all this, you need the professional behavior which is like has many avenues, but once it comes to this topic, comply with laws and avoid actions that discredit the profession, right. So, as a young CA, do not do anything illegal and which brings a discredit to this particular esteemed organization or the qualification, right. So, ethical threats to compliance with fundamental principles would be self-interest, right. So, personal benefits, I mean what do you mean by self-interest is personal benefit affects objectivity. So, your I mean more than the objective of that particular aspect, you trying to protect your personal interest. So, you have a self interest, like in the same example, if I have the shares as audit partner of a company, I should not audit that, or neither the firm should not audit that. So, it is a rule of all the audit firms in globally. If anyone holds shares, they are not auditing that particular organization because there is a self interest. So, that is ethical threat, the self interest. The second one, self review. You go and audit your own work, you do the bookkeeping, you develop the policies of the company, you implement the internal controls of organization, and you go and do the external audit also. You are reviewing your own work. So, that is called a self review threat. So, again a threat for the ethics. Advocacy is the third one, supporting clients or employees cause, promoting client shares while also providing assurance services. So, as a audit, I mean the easiest examples can be given from the auditors. So, as an auditor you are going and promoting company products, shares, so you can't do that. So, it is advocacy, right. The fourth one, familiarity. So, relationships will impair the professional skepticism. So, in any global audit firm or any audit firm to that extent would have the rotation rules because the audit partner, because after some times, I mean, end of the day people, human, so they become friendly and the professional integrity can be impaired. So, that is why we do have partner rotation rules. So, after x number of years the partner should rotate permanently from that audit, or the cooling off period would be 5 years. So, things like that. The last ethical threat would be intimidation, being deferred from acting ethically due to pressure. So, due to a pressure you forget the ethics and act according to the situation, which is also ethical threat. So, these self interest, self review, advocacy, familiarity and intimidation are some of these key ethical threats that you should definitely avoid. You should have the courage to avoid these threats when you are doing your professional decision making. So, ethical safeguards, I mean if those safeguards are there, so the best ethical safeguards would be education and training. So, that builds a lot of confidence and the awareness among the employees. Okay, if such a ethical dilemma happens, how you handle it. So, then that brings the confidence of the people and the education, the knowledge how to handle that situation. And the professional standards always encourage people to follow these professional standards which says the right thing, and for your company policies and procedures you have to bring those standards or the essence of those standards, then nothing can go wrong, right. So, safeguards within assurance client, strong ethical culture, confidentiality and information barriers. So, I mean ethical culture I already touched. So, the confidentiality and information barriers, there must be protocols to pull the data out from your laptops, or the way you store it, where you archive it, all those should be there. And as I mentioned before, the whistleblower policies also would play a bigger role, right. So, the next section, introduction to NOCLA and scenarios. So, NOCLA is what do you mean by NOCLA? So, you need to know that it is again a strong topic, but let me give the essence that. So, refers to acts or omissions or commissions that are contrary to laws and regulations. So, any act that contrary to the laws and regulations is non-compliances with laws and regulations. So, the NOCLA is the abbreviation we use. So, that could be a fraud, that could be a corruption, tax evasion, environmental breaches, or any breach to that extent can term as this NOCLA. So, what is your responsibility as a professional? So, identify this potential or the existing NOCLA situations, existing non-compliances, rules and regulation of frauds. So, the first step is to identify that. Okay. Second step, address it internally with your immediate bosses or person who is conducting. Then in case after addressing that internally, if that is not being resolved, then you need to take actions against it, right. If the concerns are not resolved, you need to go to hierarchies and report it. But still, if these are not being taken, you have to go to the law of the land, police or CID or whatever you believe appropriate, and you need to document why you did so. That is basically NOCLA. If you see any non-compliance laws and regulation, you need to follow those steps. It does not say actually go directly to police and complain. No, first you try and act to internally resolve that. If people admit that and resolve that, so then that would be beneficial. If not, take actions going to a third parties, right. So, this particular NOCLA principle protect the public interest while maintaining confidentiality and professional judgment. So, that is the more important thing. It protect the public interest and the confidentiality also will be maintained. So, situations where this particular NOCLA is encountered, if there is a bribe being given by someone and if there are false tax documentation, having a tax amount of so much, try to reduce it by manipulating financial records, misuse public funds, and your responsibility to assess the situation carefully, escalate within the organization, and act according to the NOCLA guidelines with the legal requirements as I mentioned before. So, your role, what is your role in whole this NOCLA and to ethics and integrity? Protect the public, protect the interest of the society, safeguard the interest of investors, clients and society. So, that is your role. Remember that. I mean, however, how much we are qualified, if we do not have those things, the values that we should give back to the public, then no point. So, always remember that. Support ethical decision making, you will definitely not go wrong, perform within that culture. And sometimes we have seen situations, if you behave in that manner, no one try to reach to you also to do the wrong things, because they know reaching to you is no point. You will not hell bend to any of these unethical behavior. So, show that as your image in a corporate culture. So, then everyone would be scared to play around with you. So, encourage reporting mechanism, advocate clear channels to report unethical and illegal acts. So, within the internal control framework, there must be channels to do report if any unethical practices are there. The best practice would be whistleblower mechanisms or reporting to top directors if that is the case. So, some of the tools and best practices as I mentioned, tone at the top itself, the leadership should set the examples and the culture to the organization on this ethical behavior. And second thing, there must be a clear documented code of conduct. It should be embedded to firm the company policy manuals, and that particular code of conduct should be available in the company website or in any other mechanism from the day one of the employees, and everyone should be encouraged to read what is the code of conduct, and this code of conduct should be built based on the international and the local published code of conduct principles. And there must be open door policies, encourage open communication reporting concerns. If anyone has a concern, always my door is open as a boss to come and report me, right. So, this strong ethical culture promote trust, accountability, and I am re-emphasizing that will be the sustainable practices. So, as tools, companies can have reporting platforms, hotlines, anonymous whistleblowers, training programs. So, mix of all these tools and protocols will definitely protect this ethical and integrity decision making process. So, ethical leadership is the influence plus accountability. Influence in the sense lead by example and inspire ethical behavior throughout the organization. So, as a leader, you should have ethical behavior and you should inspire by that actions all the subordinates. So, then everyone automatically will turn to that particular culture. So, accountability, take responsibility for all the ethical, climate and outcomes. I mean, take the responsibility of the actions that you have done. So, that creates safe space for ethical conversation, encourage open and non-judgmental dialogues about ethical concerns. So, that encourage all these non-judgmental dialogue and ethical concerns within an organization, right. So, very quick recap on the key principles. Ethics is fundamental to the trust, right. So, do not expect trust from any other stakeholders if company is violating ethical principles. So, that builds a credibility with the clients, stakeholders and public, right. So, I mean that is a corporate, as an individual in your personal life, that would definitely bring foundation to your life success as well. So, professionals are held to a higher standard. So, your knowledge qualifications will be definitely brightened with all this uphold integrity and objectivity in all the actions that you are taking. So, as a professional, I mean you can be called as a true professional not because you have passed the exams, but if you are performing in this particular ethical and integrity framework only, and have, I mean human nature, things can be broken. So, that is why these tools and frameworks to support good decisions are required for an organization. People would come from different backgrounds, different educational levels. So, all these, I mean, irrespective, we expect everyone to perform ethically and integrated manner, manner with integrity. So, these tools also will definitely prevent and detect any of these wrong practices. So, we need to use ethical guidelines, reporting channels and decision models to navigate these challenges. Call to action: be a role model. Very simply, be a role model, demonstrate integrity and ethical behavior in everyday actions. It's either you in a corporate company, private practice, auditor, or in your personal life, be a role model for these aspects. Speak up when something is not right, so that is very important. Don't stay silent, raise concerns promptly and responsibly. That doesn't mean to go and fight with everyone. So, there is another, I mean, there is a way professionally that you can politely speak up and to be against for all these unethical practices. So, keep learning and staying informed. So, that is important. Upgrade your knowledge, because things that we did 10 years back might not be the right way of doing these things or the better way of doing things. So, that is why you have to keep updating about new laws, regulations and ethical principles are very important. I mean, to do that, your commitment, strengths, trust and positive attitude would definitely will help to build a proper professional. So, that ends my presentation on integrity and ethical decision making. Be a role model in this area. So, whenever threats are being seen, speak up. There are legal or the code of conducts that governs you, that is to give a required safeguard to you. The NOCLA is one of the tool. So, I think we touched and as a company we can implement a lot of internal controls and monitoring mechanisms to prevent and detect all these unethical and non-integrity practices. So, you have a lot of ingredients, ways of doing these things. It's just your act is important as a role model. So, having said those final words, thank you so much listening to these 1.5 hours on integrity and ethical decision making. And over to you, Dhumindra. I think next week also you are having